Part 3 of the tutorial. So I added 2 new crons, and first off, on the previous video I said that I was using this mod to make 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 have somewhat opposite outputs, but I was wrong. If it had been on add before, I would have been right. I like how this sounds, so that's how it's staying. So the simplest of the things that I added here, the mod width, this is now controlling the levels. So it's hooked up to the LFO levels here and the 2 user knobs here that are set up to mod the levels, and it's not modding the grids. Same with the pans. So let me play something. Okay, the next thing I did was adding this cron right here. So before this knob, the damage was directly hooked up to these knobs, damage control via the combinator, and the master was going in the opposite direction from 127 to 80. So if this was at 127, this was at 0. If this was at 127, this was at 80. So 2 lines, which sounds like this. More or less. It's going to get loud. So look at these levels here, and it's the, well, actually, I'll turn that down there. Alright, so this is what I have instead. So this was a process of trial and error, figuring out which curve function I like the best, what to set this level to, and the curve amount. When I developed this patch, I used, let's see if I still have it here, used 2 Thors playing the same thing, and I actually pointed this to the levels, and I used a positive curve amount for that. Looks like I used the ROCC function. Receiver Operating Characteristic Curve, ROCC. So different curve amounts, different functions will give you different results. But that down here I'm not going to play because it's just some dinky little patch. But that's a pretty good audio crossfade, an equal power crossfade. So, moving on. No, wait. I wanted to describe something in here. Oh, so this right here, this button right here, is hooked up to this scale. So that's button 4, scaling 4 and 5, these curve amounts, and then it's using a negative scale amount and this option right here. So this option basically inverts the source and then uses this as a positive mod amount. With it off, it would actually just multiply the mods by a negative amount of the source. So if I did that, then it's the opposite. Well, and then it also points the curves in the opposite direction. So that's a way to get some nice binary logic there. Invert that. And this mix knob is hooked up to the phase. That's how it's moving around. So at the start of the phase, you can see it on this one better. So this would be the first knob, the second knob. So they don't add up to 1 in the middle. If they were lines, they would add up to 1 the whole way. And down here, they add up to more than 1 because I'm using a positive curve amount. So I'm actually inverting. I'm doing one direction of the curve for these 2 and the other direction for these 2. With the same direction of curve, it does not work at all. And these two are inverted, so one's going down, one's going up. And then I had to use two constants here to scale it, both very close to 1, in order to keep this knob right here. This is controlling the phase from 0 to 360. But if it actually gets to 360, then it flips back to the very beginning. So I want it to stay right there, get as close as possible. With some curve amounts and functions, without doing that, with just using like these knobs and like going a tick below 100%, it doesn't get very close, and the left one will end up at like right here instead of all the way down. So moving on. Let me play this for a second. All right, so this is going to get a little complicated here. I hooked up the notes to go to the KRON instead of the Thors. So now all of the notes and gates are being passed via this to the Thors. So the simplest here are the gates. This is coming out of, the gates are coming out of the quants here. Gate level. Basically, this works like the grid LFO and like the LFOs. It's just a square wave, but it has the same set of frequencies on, gate, sync, M sync, phase. And this comes into play. I could show you that real fast. As for quantizing, so if I want to quantize this LFO via this, set it to a nice fast value. No smoothing. I use this knob. Smoothing with that knob. There's different functions here. You can also use these curve functions. So I could use, say, LFO1's curve function, and then LFO1 stops using that curve function. But then I can control this to control the curve. Okay, so that's the simple quantizing via the quants. Let me reset all that. All right. Before I actually show you the note quantizing, I'm going to show you how to use the pattern sequencer. So wave 2, right now it's not being used as anything. It looks like a curvy wave. So on here I'm going to select wave 2, and I'm going to choose a type of weighted pattern. So now this says weighted pattern sequence, right? Wave 3 will still say nothing because it's not being used as anything. Wave 1 will say weighted note quantizer, because this being used down here. If I did that, if I change it to 1, it would list both on there. Okay, so this is what that sounds like. So this little lamp here lights up. You can see it turned off when I turn this off. It lights up when these special waves are being used to help keep track of what's going on, because it gets kind of complicated. Let's see, but let me turn that back to the way it was. So what I'm doing here, make sure it's all set, is controlling the quant via the note signal. It's coming in, that's via this special gate type. Turns off when I let go of the note. pass it on. And I'm modding the gate level here with the note velocity. So it's passing that on. So the notes, first off, these are random LFOs. And then their output gets quantized via this right here. So it's a scale because I have it set at 12 points. If I set it at anything else, like say 7, it could be a cycle of fifths. If I get there, or 24, it'd be 2 octaves, etc. So I have it set up with the root note and G, or a fifth. So after it generates a random number and quantizes it here, it then, via the mod section, adds in the notes, the actual note value, and subtracts a constant in order to keep it centered around the original note. It's adding in this random number too, so I have to adjust for the random thing that I'm adding. That's via this section right here, and the rest of it's not important. Okay, I have this set up here to show you a saw wave, but it's going to still say random because of a quirk in the code. Because it's complicated. But it looks like a saw wave here, so if I make it real wide, you can see how the output here is snapping to each octave. So if I put in a few more things, it starts looking more like a line. Now, if this wasn't weighted, then it wouldn't be weighted and this would look different. But right now, if I start pulling this up, you can see how more and more of it's going to land on that. There's about an equal amount. It's less and less. All right, I'll put that back on random. I've only got a couple minutes here. I feel like I forgot to talk about a bunch of things. But in case I didn't say it, you do have to select the type right here and then the specific wave. And this operates for both the grid and the LFOs, but I'm only using the LFOs now. The colors here that I set up. So I think I talked about using the color presets available right here. You can also set them manually. So this is the overall meter color, lamp color. This right here controls the 2 RGB values for the displays. So this is the primary, secondary. This is on green. So if I turn this to that, it'd be yellow, white. This one's on reddish orange, yellow again, red, etc. So you can show it and hide it. And on the back, there are these menus, so you can choose the individual colors for various things. So that's controlling the logo, front and back. This is controlling the titles. And the inside color, you can turn it off, or you can choose different color. None of those get saved with device patches. That's combinator and song level. Oh, that's kind of an ugly combo. Let me just turn them all into main. Yeah, so let me think about anything I've forgotten to mention. I'm going to have to make another video or two. There's a lot of stuff I didn't talk about. Perhaps using a different patch. I put this arpeggiator in here specifically to have something to talk about and to be able to talk about the note quantizing and the quants. Not sure it's really necessary for this patch. But I'm out of time. So thanks for watching. Bye.